everything is so impermanent. And to really appreciate that about life, to appreciate the bad stuff is so you until you realize how beneficial it is to be grateful for the bad stuff too.
What I love about this book is you write about how abrasive you were, how much energy you had when you walked in the room, how you hurt people's feelings, and then you tell a great story about Jane Fonda calling you out, and then you making a decision at that moment to become a different kind of person, to hear that kind of honesty and shift. So for people who are in their life and not being the person that they want to be, who have feel like they've fallen off the road, how do you take that kind of constructive criticism, as my mother used to call it, and write it and use it to right your own ship, to use it to write your life, to put you back on path?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's so important, and I know you know this, we've spoken about this. It's never too late to get your shit together. It is
Amen.
it is never too late. You can be a hot mess and you can wake up the next day and be like, okay, and we're going to take one step today to get me out of this hot messness. Like we're going to take one big step and then tomorrow we'll take another one. So that's the first thing that everyone needs to know. You are never unrecoverable. And the second thing is when you are motivated to be the best version of yourself in terms of your graciousness, your generosity, and I don't just mean materialistically, I mean generosity of spirit. What are you
Right.
willing to give, for others, and what are you willing to sacrifice to be there for others? Like how much are you willing to give to be a sister? That's the theme of the book, sisterhood.
Yes.
And in terms of all of us women, it feels like we're at the point in our lives where, or in our lifetime, for me, where women are finally understanding how important it is for us to be together. Like especially in the backdrop of what's happening in our country right now, women
Mhm.
are the reason why we're sitting here is because people are so threatened by the power of women. So
Right.
I think a good reminder for everyone or every woman who's fallen off the track or doesn't feel like she's gelling or in her flow state is you're the one who's going to get you back there, and every day is a decision to
Mm.
take a step in that direction. And you have the whole, like, you have to think of every woman when you do something like that. Like when I'm at my lowest and I don't have it in me, I'm like, okay, think of all the women you're lifting up just by lifting yourself up.
But what do you how do you kind of is there any point in here? Because so many people will say, like, well, she's never been as low as me, or she never have had to go through the heartbreak I've gone through, or she doesn't know how bad it is and how hard it will be for me to pick myself up. And you actually do. So I want you to talk a little bit about kind of for people who are out there, and there are millions, especially now with people conversations I'm in, people feel like they cannot pick themselves up. They cannot get out of the noise. They're terrified about all kinds of things, right? Talk about a really low point in your life in here where you picked yourself back up and you even though you were terrified, you kept moving towards the woman you wanted to be.
Well, I think a good example would be, which is in the book, was when Joe Coy and I broke up because it was such a public facing relationship and no one had ever really seen me be that happy or be that in love. And the reception to that was very intoxicating. Like I loved that people were rooting for us in such a public way. I had never been in a relationship like that before. And
Mhm.
I was really in love with Joe Coy. I didn't expect for that to happen. It was an old friend. And I was really in love with him when we broke up. And so I didn't want to break up with him, but I felt that I had to break up with him in order to respect myself. And again, whenever I make those decisions, I am thinking about all women. I'm not just thinking about my situation. I'm thinking about if I'm such a warrior for women, then I always have to make the decision that's in the best interest of all women. And while that may sound, inflated, and like that's really how I feel. I feel like, okay, what kind of example I'm setting, if am I setting? And I of course have to be true to myself. But that was an instance in which I didn't want to have to break up with him. I did it. It was very public. I handled it with grace and dignity. I didn't ever spill the tea about what exactly went down. I didn't
Mhm.
throw anyone under a bus. I respected the fact that we were in a relationship and that I was sensitive to his feelings and that I wasn't going to talk about it publicly and embarrass him any further. And that was and I was really low while I was making all of these very powerful decisions. Like I went on
Mm.
Glennon and Abby Wambach's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things, and like 2 days after we broke up, because I didn't want to reschedule again, and we had this really powerful conversation about breaking up, and it was gut-wrenching for me, but through all of that I was choosing the higher path. Do you know what I mean? Like, not in a
Exactly.
religious sense so much as a spiritual
Mm.
one. Like, I was like, that's okay. You're going to lift yourself out of here by continually doing the right thing. Be respectful, be gracious, be open, be honest. And it doesn't matter if you cry in front of people. It's okay. Just be real, be real about it. You don't have to
Yeah.
throw anyone under the bus to be real about stuff. So that was an experience for me where I felt so hopeless. I really thought I thought Joe and I were going to be together. Like, I thought I was done with guys. So to find out that that wasn't going to be true, and that also he had lifted me up so much, I thought, whoa, 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 am I still going to be at this spot without him the way that he made me feel? And I just remember saying to myself, is like, of course you are. You're not here because of him. This is a part of your life. This isn't your entire life. This is a story, not the story.
So
Um,
how do you kind of heartbreak is so hard for people to get over, starting in our teenage years, maybe starting as children, right? You might have a heartbreak with your parents, you might have a first love heartbreak, and then it kind of just continues. And then you have these massive heartbreaks. How do you think you heal from heartbreak? You talk about this in the book, but I think it's really good to talk about.
Yeah, I think you have to give out, like, double down on your love. You got to give out love. You got to give out to other people. I think that is the best way to heal, is to help other people. I,
Yeah.
I, and, and I also sitting in the grief, that is so hard. So many people can't even sit by themselves without being in grief.
Yeah.
So many people can't be alone, and sitting through your grief, like actually sitting there, not turning on the TV, not calling a girlfriend, not distracting yourself with food or drugs or alcohol, and just going, I want to move through this, and I want this to get through me as quickly as possible while being
Mm.
present. Like, that's a beautiful spiritual thing to do as well, and it works. Like, when you're not distracting yourself from pain, it will move through you in a quicker way. And I have experienced that now multiple times.
So you talk, your other book, which you talk a lot about, losing your brother and then going into therapy, which I also thought was so brave, and to talk about learning how to work through your grief to become the woman that you want to be. None of us can really become who we want to be unless we, I believe, work through our grief, sit in our solitude, understand what is actually in there, and
Mhm.
either write our way out, sit our way through it. How has therapy helped you become the woman that you described in the first chapter as a little girl and the woman you are at the end of the book?
Because you just become so much more honest about yourself. You're not lying to yourself anymore. One of the things that therapy taught me to do was spend more time alone, stop relying on all the noise, stop having so much noise. And that in and of itself, if you're scared to spend time alone, then that means you really need to,
Yeah.
because that's where you really get to know yourself, and to be vulnerable with someone else, and to have someone to unravel your grief
Mhm.
allows you to see so many other people in their pain. You can
Yeah.
understand why someone's acting a certain way. You can see that you don't take things as personally, because you
Mhm.
understand that everyone has a story, and someone might be going through something really difficult. And a lot of behavior is a result of people's
Yeah.
personal issues. So it makes you a lot more empathetic, and that makes me stronger, when you can empathize with people. I think I was lacking that a lot. And I always had the compassion, but not the empathy, not really thinking, about what it's like to be another person or what they might be going through. And and again, it makes you feel solid. Like when you have it's like all hands are on deck. Like I can read someone's energy. When I meet a person, I can pretty much suss it out in a few minutes. And I know if someone's sad, if someone needs like, like a little push in the right direction. Like I can sense those things because I feel so grounded. And that is the gift of therapy. That is the gift of grieving and sharing your grief with someone, being heard, being seen. That allows you to move through it. And when you get through that, when you get
Mm.
through all of the yuck, because if someone told me how long it was going to take to go to therapy, then you get out, you have to apply everything you've learned from therapy. You're like, oh my God, this is like a 6-year I'm like going to grad school. It was too long. And it wasn't that much fun, and I like to have
Right.
fun. So I was like, this is really a drag. But the results are just indisputable. Like you can't negotiate with a self-actualized person the way, like you can't say that that's a bad thing. No one comes out of therapy and is like, that was a huge mistake.